You're going to hear a very specific date in this story. Write it down if you have to, March 3rd, 1988. It doesn't mean anything to you yet. By the end, it's going to mean everything. My name doesn't matter. My dad's does. His name was Robert. And 6 weeks after his funeral, I found out I didn't actually know him. It was late October, the kind of gray that doesn't commit to rain, it just hangs there. I was in his house alone, going through the filing cabinet in his office because someone had to and my mom couldn't. The house smelled like him still. Old coffee, engine grease, the specific dust of a man who never opened a window. There was a coffee ring on the desk that had probably been there since summer, and nobody had the heart to wipe it off yet. I wasn't looking for anything. I was looking for the deed to the house. Boring, procedural, exactly the kind of task grief hides behind. Because if you're organizing paperwork, you don't have to feel anything. You're just a person with a task. Instead, in a folder labeled insurance old, I found a bank statement. Not from our bank. From a credit union 3 states away, in a town I'd never heard him mention in 41 years of being his kid. The account had a balance of $184,612. It had been open since 1988. Here's what you do. When you're a grieving adult and you find a secret 6-figure account your recently deceased father never told anyone about, you assume the worst version. I did it in under 10 seconds. An affair. A second family. A woman named something soft like Linda or Carol somewhere in Ohio. I didn't sleep that night. I made a list, every business trip, every working late, every year my parents almost got divorced, and I built a case against a man who couldn't defend himself anymore. By the next morning, I had 3 theories, 1 spreadsheet, and 0 right to any of it. Theory 1, an affair. Theory 2, he was hiding money from my mother for a divorce he chickened out of twice, in 1994 and again in 2003, both years I actually remember as unusually tense. Theory 3, the one I didn't want to say out loud even in my own head. Gambling. Or worse, some kind of debt to someone he was quietly paying off for 3 decades. I called the credit union anyway, because apparently grief makes you reckless in exactly the wrong direction. If you've never tried to get information out of a bank about your own dead father's account, here's a tip. Grief means nothing to a phone tree. I spent 40 minutes pressing 1 for account services before a woman named Denise finally told me, very calmly, that without a death certificate and court documentation, she legally could not confirm or deny the account even existed. I had the death certificate in my glove box. I'd been carrying it around for 6 weeks like a driver's license I never wanted. It took 11 days, a probate lawyer named Frank Delgado, and $340 in legal fees to get the actual account history actually faxed, to Frank's office, because apparently this credit union had not modernized a single process since the Clinton administration. Here's what it showed. Not a lump sum. Not one big transfer that screamed affair. A deposit of $150 every single month for 36 years. Same day each month. The third. March 3rd, 1988 was the very first one. I want you to sit with that because I had to. My dad, who once made my brother return a video game because it was $4 over his birthday budget, who I genuinely believed for years was just cheap, had been quietly, invisibly, moving money out of his own paycheck every month for 36 straight years. Before I was born. Before he met my mother. That last part is the one that broke the whole theory. I told my brother first over the phone because I couldn't say it out loud in a room with another human being watching my face. He went quiet for almost 15 seconds, which, if you know my brother, is basically a full nervous breakdown. Then he asked the same question I'd asked myself. Does Mom know? I said no. He said don't tell her yet. I told her that same night anyway because I have never once in my life been able to keep something from my mother, and this was apparently not going to be the year I learned. My mom did not take it well. Not because of the money. Because now she was doing the same math I was, except with 31 years of marriage on the line instead of my curiosity. She sat at the kitchen table with the printed bank statement in front of her for almost 20 minutes without saying a word, and then she asked me the only question that actually mattered to her. Was it before us or during us? I told her the deposit started in 1988. She did the math out loud, slowly, the way you do math you're afraid of. "That's 4 years before he met me," she said. Then she said it again, quieter, like she was trying to believe it the second time. 4 years before he met me. For about 4 days after that, our family quietly fell apart around a man who wasn't even there to make it worse. My mom stopped sleeping in their room and started falling asleep on the couch with the TV on low. My brother started calling me every night at 11, not really to talk, just to not be alone with the theories in his own head. And I kept looking at old photo albums, at pictures of my dad at 20, 22, 25, trying to find some version of him that made sense of $150 a month for 36 years. Frank the lawyer is the one who actually cracked it, not me, because the account wasn't opened under Robert alone. It was a custodial account, which meant it was opened legally for someone else. A minor, born February 1988, 1 month before that first deposit. Here's the part I still think about more than anything else in this entire story. My dad was 19 in 1988, not married, not anywhere near my mother yet, and according to the paperwork Frank pulled, he had a daughter that year one he did not raise, did not name on any birth certificate as father. And this is the part that took me another 2 weeks and a very awkward call to accept. One he had voluntarily on paper agreed to have no contact with in exchange for the adoptive family allowing him to anonymously provide. Not visit, not know her name growing up, just provide. For 36 years, you'd think finding out you have a half-sister you never knew existed would be the strangest part of your month. It wasn't even the strangest part of that Tuesday. That happened 2 hours later, when I had to explain to my mother, over the phone, why this was actually the better explanation, and watched her go from devastated to something closer to relieved in the span of one sentence, which is a genuinely strange thing to witness in another human being. Her name is Karen. She's 56. She grew up 40 minutes from where I grew up. We had the same dentist for 6 years, a man named Dr. Halloran with a fish tank in the waiting room, and never once crossed paths there. When Frank helped me track down her adoptive family's old attorney and eventually Karen herself, I wasn't ready for what she told me on the phone, in a voice that sounded unsettlingly like my brother's. She knew. She'd always known there was money. Her adoptive parents told her when she turned 18. An anonymous benefactor, monthly, no name attached, just a note the very first year that said, for her, always, no strings. She'd spent 3 decades assuming it was guilt money from someone ashamed of her. She told me she used to picture him as some faceless businessman easing his conscience once a month, the way you'd set a reminder to feel bad about something. She never once, in 36 years, imagined he might have picked up the phone once, at 19 years old, terrified, and made a promise instead of an excuse. It wasn't guilt. Frank found the original 1988 agreement in the account paperwork, and near the bottom, in handwriting I'd know anywhere because it's the same handwriting on every birthday card I ever got, my dad had written one extra line the lawyers hadn't required. Not because I have to, because I want to know she's okay, even if I never get to. He was 19, scared, broke, not ready by his own admission in that letter to be anyone's father. So he made the one promise he could actually keep for the rest of his life, that she would never once, not for a single month across 36 years, wonder if someone out there was thinking about her. He kept it longer than he kept almost anything else in his life. Longer than 2 jobs, longer than several New Year's resolutions. Longer, frankly, than he kept most conversations with me going past 10 minutes. We met in person for the first time on a Sunday in November, at a diner neither of us had been to before, both of us too nervous to order food. She got there 12 minutes early. I got there 8 minutes early. We sat there for almost a full minute before either of us said anything, because it turns out there's no small talk template for this. She brought a folder of her own, 18 photographs, spanning her whole life, that she'd start looking at differently the moment she found out where the money actually came from. A school photo from 2nd grade. A graduation photo from a college my dad never once mentioned paying anything toward, even though Frank later confirmed a tuition gift, wired quietly, the same year I was fighting with my dad about community college costs and losing. I sat with that for a long time after that dinner. There was a year, my sophomore year, when my dad and I had a 2-week fight about $300 for a textbook. The same year, it turns out, He'd sent Karen's college fund an extra $4,000 in one lump sum, without a single conversation about it to anyone in our house. I used to think he just didn't care much about money conversations. Now I think he'd already spent his whole life deciding exactly where every dollar of his money was allowed to go, quietly, and none of us were ever supposed to see the ledger. Karen and I have had 6 dinners since November. She laughs like my brother and hates cilantro like my mom, which nobody can explain. And she still has his handwriting memorized better than I do, because she read that one letter probably 400 times over the years before she ever knew who wrote it. My mom, for what it's worth, eventually met her too. It was awkward for about the first 10 minutes, and then it wasn't. My mom told her near the end of that first meeting that she was glad he'd kept his promise, because it meant the version of him she'd married really had been the honest one. Just not the only one. Remember that date I told you to write down? March 3rd, 1988. I found out something else about it a few weeks after that first diner meeting, sitting across from Karen again, this time actually eating. March 3rd wasn't just the date of the first deposit. It was her birthday. He didn't pick a random day of the month to send that money. He picked the day she was born, and he did it again, on purpose, every month for 36 years, so that some small, private part of every single month of his adult life was quietly, deliberately about her. I spent 6 weeks after my father's funeral building a case against him. I had motive, timeline, and a spreadsheet. What I actually found wasn't a scandal. It was a discipline I never once saw him apply to anything else. Not his health, not his temper, not the garage he swore for a decade he'd clean out. He was, by every account I have, an inconsistent man. Except in the one place none of us were ever supposed to look. Every month now, on the 3rd, I send Karen a text. Nothing big, just thinking about you. No explanation needed, because we both already know exactly where that habit came from. He taught me that part too. I just didn't know it until I read it in his handwriting. 11 days after I first opened a folder labeled Insurance, Old, looking for something so much smaller than what I found.